Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is just a couple of months away, and it's exciting to know that we will be playing the game very soon. However, the developers have given us some really incredible insights behind the game's development in a brand new interview with GameInformer. All around, if you're an FF7 fan, this information is going to be incredibly crucial to you. So please go ahead and hit that subscribe button, where I give incredibly crucial information all the time, I think. So first of all, I'm sorry that these are somewhat low resolution. These screenshots are directly from the magazine itself, and when you zoom in, unfortunately it is an image, and so this is just kind of the quality that it's left at because it won't let you actually zoom in on the website, and I screenshotted them, so it might be a little bit blurry, but bear with me on that. That being said, let's talk about Final Fantasy VII Remake's announcement. What an important day. I still remember that announcement like it was yesterday. I love going back and watching people's reaction to the E3 2015 trailer. The energy, the excitement, seeing what Final Fantasy VII meant to people was just such an important time. I can totally see why the developers would go back to people's reactions during that time to get inspiration and motivation to continue. So in the interview, it says this: PlayStation's E3 2015 livestream had just revealed a teaser trailer featuring the iconic Final Fantasy VII protagonist, Cloud Strife, walking through Midgar in glorious, modern HD graphics. The dream of so many fans, a modern remake of the classic RPG, was finally realized. The fans weren't the only one feeling the weight of the moment though, and it was no longer just the ground that was shaking, it was Nomura's entire body. There were no staff members around, so I was kind of just off to the side, standing there alone, Nomura says. When I heard the cheers from the crowd and the passion, I became overwhelmed and began shivering. I was like a fawn, just overwhelmed by the intensity of the crowd. I thought, this has become such a big deal, and I wanted to cry. Holy crap, man. But I feel it though. Like, you know, if someone was reacting like that to something that I had created, and the literal second coming of something that I created too, you know, feeling what that meant to people, and honestly just experiencing being part of it as a fan is really, dare I say, transcendent in a way. It was super emotional. I still think that trailer in particular was one of the greatest teaser trailers of all time. Next, they give a little bit of backstory on what led to Final Fantasy VII Remake happening in the first place, and for those of you who are veterans in the community, I think you're gonna remember this. We were on the US media tour for Final Fantasy 13, and we took a bunch of interviews, and we got a ton of questions from reporters asking, when are we going to make a Final Fantasy VII Remake? Kitase recalls, just hearing that so many times, I did think we would do it one day, that's for certain. Kitase returned to Tokyo and approached Nomura about making it a reality. Fan and media demand was at a fever pitch, and Square Enix was beginning to embrace the idea of modern remakes for classic games more than ever before. They knew they had to act. I remember back then, almost every week around the release window of Final Fantasy 13, there was an interview asking if they were going to remake Final Fantasy VII. And of course, it would get clickbaited like madness. So many headlines: are they going to remake Final Fantasy VII? When are they going to remake it? Fans speculating. There was just so much. And now here we are. It's hard to believe that it's actually happening. Now, this quote right here is a bit tough, and you're gonna see why. Though Endo, the battle director, wanted to introduce action, his desire to balance it with traditional ATB elements struck a chord with Nomura. I do have this idea of how Final Fantasy battles should be and should feel, Nomura says. We want to still keep this strategy element, in which players still consider the elemental weaknesses of enemies during the battle while using these actions and being engaged intact. That was always my core belief in how we should approach Final Fantasy battles. I didn't want it to be a game where it's a reflex type action or reflex based battle. We wanted to combine all of these elements. You know, that is an oddly specific comment to make, considering there was a recent Final Fantasy game that did not have elemental weaknesses and was reflex based. Listen, I'm not saying that he's saying anything. I'm just saying it is oddly, you know, specific to mention those things here in this interview, considering Final Fantasy 16 did just launch. But I'll say this much: I do prefer the RPG elements to stay in the battle system for sure, and not for it to just be purely combo driven. That's for sure. That's at least my personal taste. I don't think that makes it objectively correct, but I think that is what I personally like to see. And going forward, I do think I want to see elemental weaknesses in a Final Fantasy game, and I do think I want to see things that keep the strategic element. This is something I've talked about a lot. I don't think that they have to, in a purist sense, keep everything as it's always been. I think that they just have to come up with new ways to adapt the same feelings that the older games gave you in new ways. You can make a battle system that feels strategic in any number of ways, but as long as the battles at their core do feel strategic, then I think I'll be satisfied with it, and it will feel what I think Final Fantasy is supposed to feel like. So with the next quote for the world map, again, this is a very base Nomura quote. This whole interview is kind of a W for him in my opinion. The team members, including creative director Nomura, were happy to hear that the world map was back, allowing players to freely explore the vast open wilds in the original game. Ever since the world map disappeared, I really had this weird feeling, and I always thought it was strange without a world map, Nomura says. I thought that you can't really have an RPG without a world map, and specifically for Final Fantasy VII, to fully experience this world, we must have a world map. We can't be without it. Based. Thank you. What I even say, right? This is just the truth. This is what I've been feeling. This is what most people have been feeling. We want the world map to return. We want the feeling of exploration. We want the feeling of getting an airship and flying around in it. These are the things that people crave. This is what they want. And that's not to say that all of the games that don't have these are not good Final Fantasies. I mean, 10 doesn't necessarily have a world map that you traverse, but I think most of us still really love that game regardless of that. However, I do think that we are kind of overdue for the return of the world map, and I'm ready for it with Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Oh boy, Zack is back. This quote is gonna leave you scratching your head a little bit. At the end of Final Fantasy VII Remake, players were surprised by Zack's unexpected appearance. The character who died before the original game's events appears to have a more defined role this time. We have used the character of Zack to depict the combined view of the story and scenario writer Nojima and director Nomura and producer Kitase, the original creators, intents of how the world of Final Fantasy VII came to be, and its policies and rules governing this world. Director Naoki Hamaguchi says, this is going to be depicted through the character of Zack. As much as the whispers within the story, Zack is an immensely important, crucial key character to this story that I believe fans will enjoy within Rebirth. He's important. We know you guys like him and you want to do things with him in this story. Okay, I think we get it now. What's confusing to me about this statement, though, is that they say that they want to show the intents of how the world of Final Fantasy VII came to be. Now, is that the world as in Gaia, or is it the world as in the world of Final Fantasy VII from an IP perspective, if you get what I'm saying? The planet as a piece of lore versus like how the origin of Final Fantasy VII came to be. I assume that it's something to do with the planet itself. I think this is just one of those things that we wouldn't really be able to know exactly what it means out of context until we played Rebirth. And if you want me to be really honest with you, I don't even think we're gonna really know after Rebirth. The mystery of what's going on with Zack is not gonna be solved in Rebirth. That's a part 3 thing. I'm telling you that right now. So if you think you're going to play Rebirth and you think you're going to know what's going on with Zack, you're not. Maybe some of the multiverse stuff will be cleared up, but outside of that, I'm not expecting to play this game and be like, I know what's going on with Zack now. Nah, that's not going to happen, Chief. Now this is a quote I found pretty interesting. But it's not content bloat to inflate those playtime hours. When I asked Hamaguchi for his favorite RPG outside of the Final Fantasy series, without hesitation, he names The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt from CD Projekt Red's 2015 masterpiece that many considered one of the greatest games of all time. That title is known for its meaningful side content, which is so strong that its storylines sometimes even match those of the main story. Regarding titles like The Witcher 3, which has that open world role-playing type element, we did some extensive research into these types of titles and looked at it as a baseline in which Rebirth should be a type of title that can stand alongside it and have the type of content that would be satisfying to its players. That's awesome. That's exactly what I've been preaching for Final Fantasy to do all of these years. That is so so what I exactly want. I know that there are some JRPG purists that probably wouldn't be too happy with that, but I am over the moon hearing that, and I hope they double down on that even harder, triple down on that even harder for Final Fantasy 17. Assuming if CBU1 works on 17 or 18, if they work on another mainline Final Fantasy, if Hamaguchi ends up directing that, and with this attitude, I certainly hope that he does. That's exactly what I want to see. Now, this quote is one that has made social media talk a lot, and of course, it is about the death of Aerith. I'm going to start here at the second paragraph and go right into the quote. He says this: beginning with the original Final Fantasy VII, when we had to start working on it, it was already decided from the get-go that life would be the central theme surrounding Final Fantasy VII, Nomura says. I knew that we had to depict life and death within the title. Prior to Final Fantasy VII, there have been other titles where characters have experienced tragedy, but many of them have come back or revived in some way. But I believe that loss is something that happens unexpectedly, and it's not something so dramatic or drawn out, but is something in which a person that you have just conversed with is suddenly gone and never comes back. I believe that the person who dies should not return in this title, and that is what we did with the original. Okay, yeah, I don't... Boys, it kind of sounds like he's just flat out saying that Aerith is going to die. Which, okay, let me be clear here. I have absolutely no doubt that the most iconic scene in video games is probably going to be recreated. That is the death of Aerith. You will see her die, and I believe when she dies, she will probably die. However, I don't think that that means that the death is permanent. Now, I know that Nomura just said all of this stuff about death being permanent and all of that goodness, but this is the same guy who's the creator of Kingdom Hearts. Also, I think it'd be weird for him to just flat out say Aerith dies in this GameInformer interview. I just don't think that's what happens. Also, not for it to be dramatic and drawn out. Again, also what he's describing here is kind of contradictory. We've seen Zack come back to life. He literally came back. I know that there are still people who theorize that it's some type of, live stream Force Ghost thing that's happening. I don't think that's, I think he's alive, perhaps in a different timeline, but he's living, and they've kind of said that in multiple interviews. It's in his bio on the website. You can see that he is alive. He defied his fate, right? So suddenly now I'm supposed to believe this is the case with Aerith, and they literally just spoiled that in this interview? Absolutely no way. That's just no. That scene will indeed be recreated. However, will Aerith remain dead by the end of part 3 is the big mystery to me. There's no question on whether it's going to happen. It's going to happen. But will it stay intact? That's the big question, especially now that we have mechanisms to revive people in Final Fantasy VII's lore. If Sephiroth can come back, if Zack can come back, if Barrett can be fatally stabbed and then revived and healed by the Arbiters, it would seem to me that the return of Aerith is already set up in a way. But these are just my thoughts on it. Please let me know yours in the comments below. Be sure to hit that subscribe button, and if you want to support the channel, be sure to check out channel members with the join button below. And I'll see you all in the next video.